Good morning or good evening or good afternoon, whatever time you are watching this. I thought I would show you, this is a really quick and simple design, but I thought it might be something that you might like to do. I am working on favors that we are going to use for a gathering for a special bride-to-be who loves to read. And so that's why I chose to do the bookmarks. I debated on what I was going to do for a while, and then, as oftentimes happens, this is what happened, what came to mind, and I'm calling this Love Takes Flight. And I wanted to start with a larger, darker heart, and then each heart gets a little bit lighter and a little bit smaller as it goes off in flight. So I just thought I'd show you quickly how to paint this. You might want to paint some up for yourself or for gifts or for random acts of kindness or whatever, favors for a bridal shower or a wedding. Lots of options there. Or maybe gifts for your book club. Okay, so I'm just going to get started here real quickly. So I just wanted you to see the finished piece. By the way, I got these bookmarks from Amazon. They came in a pack of 20, and they have varied colored tassels, and they're really easy to paint on. It's a slick surface, but it's very easy to paint on. All right, so whenever I am painting anything with round edges, which all these hearts have round edges, I always use a filbert brush. Because of the round edges on my filbert brush, it just helps me keep those curves a lot better. My bottom heart is painted in petal pink. And I wanted to go with pinks leaning toward a little bit of lavender. So I always start my base coat kind of in the center of the piece, not on the edge, just to work it into my brush. This heart is going to lay on top of this one. So I'm not going to worry about it too much at this point if some of this color gets over onto that heart on top. I'm laying my brush down, a little pressure. Now I'm going to use a lot of pressure as I pull through. And I'm going to release pressure as I get into the point. I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. And again, I reloaded my brush, so I'm working that into the center part of my heart, pressing through, releasing pressure as I get to the tips of the bristles. And then I'm going to finish it up. Again, this heart on top is going to lay on top of this heart. And I'm going to paint this over the point on the bottom. While that's drying, I'm going to go to my second heart. By the way, I did say in the pattern to undercoat this third heart with blush pink, so I've already done that. My next heart is a mix of about 2 parts of blush pink plus petal pink. I'm going to use the same brush, and I didn't even wash it out since I'm using the same color that I used as my base color here in my mix. So again, and I'm showing you this just so you see again, I'm starting on the outside edge, press through, release pressure as I get close to that heart. I'm going to finish it off here. I'm just stroking this in. I'm not patting it in. That's exactly what I want you to see. So on this side again, press through and release pressure. And then again, press through to finish off that heart. As I said, I already undercoated that one with the blush pink. I'm going to clean my brush out now because I do want to get that lighter color in. And I'm using my mix, which is the blush pink plus cotton candy, about 1 to 2 parts. And I'm using my 10 again, 10 filbert. And this heart is laying underneath that one. I'm just going to come down to that heart underneath. This is good practice for you. I always say practicing your strokes is going to help with all your painting, and that includes the base coating. You get your base coating done so much quicker. Okay, now for the other 2 hearts, I'm going to switch to my number 8 shader, since they're, I'm sorry, not shader, filbert, since they're a little bit smaller. And again, I like that nice rounded edge. So heart number 4 is going to be based with cotton candy. And again, got a little hair there. In the center, I'm going to work it in. Start up here in the round area, and that's why I like the filbert. Release pressure as I get close to that heart underneath. Same thing on this side. And I just sneak to that heart. And then I finish it off kind of with the chisel edge of the brush. Just grab a little bit more paint. And then my top heart is done with a mix of baby blush and cotton candy, about 2 to 1. And the mixes are just approximate. You need to adjust them to suit yourself. But you can see how they start. They're eventually getting lighter and lighter and lighter. And now I'm going to go back and put second coats on all of these. Okay, so I have 2 coats on all of my hearts. Your center number 3 heart should be a little bit lighter than the one below it. If not, you might want to add a little bit more cotton candy to your mix and lighten it up just a little bit. But for pretty much for all intents and purposes, we're good. We're going to add some highlights to all of these hearts, and I'm going to be using my Dynasty blenders. I'm going to use a number 12 and a number 4. Let me see if I can get in a little closer here for you so you can see easier what I'm doing. Okay, so again, I'm going to use my brush dry. Get my paint over here. I'm going to start with my bottom heart. I'm going to load my brush in my petal pink because that's my base color, and I always like to do that so I have some of that color in my brush so my highlight's not too harsh. I'm going to work it into my brush. And I'm going to pick up some blush pink in the brush. I'm going to work that in as well. And I'm going to start on the bottom heart. And I always start in the center of the area because I want my brightest highlight right in the center. I'm just going to tap my brush. And it's not going to show up tons, but you should see it. I'm going to work up toward the outside edges. But not all the way to the edge. Got a little bit on outside the line. And as long as you have a damp brush handy and get there quick enough. Should be able to get rid of any rough edges there, because paper's pretty slick, but since it is paper, it's going to absorb the moisture quickly, so you need to get at it pretty quickly. Okay, I'm going to come back and I'm going to pick up a little bit more blush pink in my brush and mix it in just like I did before. I'm going to come to my next heart. And I'm going to tap it again in the center areas of this heart without going all the way to the outside edges. I'm going to come back down to my large heart. It should be dry by now. Picking up a tad more of the blush pink in my brush. I'm going to work it into my brush on my palette. I'm going to add just a bit more highlight to the center of this heart. Picking up a tad more blush pink in my brush and blending it in. And then I'm going to pick up a little bit of cotton candy in my dirty brush and blend that in. And I'm going to tap that on top of that first highlight, but I'm going to leave a little bit, and I should have said this on the one below, a little bit of that first highlight showing around the outside edges. I'm also going to use this color and start adding some highlight. Let's pick up a little bit more to my number 3 heart. So again, starting in the center, tapping out. I'm not going to pick up any more paint. I'm going to add a little bit of this to my first heart. And again, not as much as the last two. Doing the same thing on heart number 2. And heart number 3. I'm not tapping as hard as I did the first time either. Just kind of laying it in there, just letting color slowly build. I'm going to add a little bit of baby blush to my dirty brush, and again, I'm working it into the brush. I'm going to start with heart number 3 this time. Goes mostly in the center. Now, I'm not going to add any more paint to my brush. I'm going to come down to heart number 2 and add a little bit. And then heart number 3, or heart number 1, sorry, for that little extra highlight kind of right there in the center. I'm going to pick up a tad more baby blush in my dirty brush and blend it in. I'm going to add a little bit more to my center heart and heart number 2. I'm going to stop. Well, let's add just a touch more. Again, I'm not reloading my brush to my lower heart. And pick up a teeny bit more baby blush in my brush for heart number 3. And I'm going to add a tiny bit of warm white to my dirty brush. And I'm going to add that only to heart number 3. So I hope you can see that each of these hearts is getting a little bit lighter. I'm going to clean this brush out now. I'm going to start working on the next 2. I'm going to switch to my number 4 blender. Again, I'm using it dry. Going to pick up cotton candy, which was my base mix for heart number 4. Picking up a little bit of baby blush. I'm going to tap that in the center of my heart. Again, not going all the way out to the outside edges. Picking up a little bit more baby blush and working it in. Going to add that to my top heart. Here again, you're not going to see it a whole lot, but it will be there. Pick up a tiny bit more of that baby blush. Brighten up these highlights. And I'm going to pick up a little warm white in the dirty brush and work it in. I'm going to start with my top heart. I'm not adding any more. I'm going to add some highlight to heart number 4. And then a tad more warm white to heart number 5. Just right in the center there. I'm going to add some crosshatch lines to heart number 2. And I'm doing that with baby blush and my liner. And as I'm sure you know, but if you forgot, I'm going to remind you here that, I've got to find my paint. Here we are. You need to add some extra moisture to your paint and brush when you're using that liner, so the paint just flows off of your brush. And I'm going to do that on baby blush on heart number 2. And I like to curve them a little bit. Again, this paper does tend to suck up the moisture, so you may need to reload a little more often than normally. And I try as much as I can to get the same look on both sides. And I just kind of eye it in and try to keep them about the same distance apart. They don't have to be perfect. I like crosshatch. I just think it adds a lot to a piece. Then I'm going to add some warm white lines to heart number 4. So I'm going to do the same thing. Curve these lines just a little bit. We're going to shade the number 1 heart with a brush mix of petal pink and magenta. And what I like to do is I'm going to pick up a corner of magenta in my brush. I'm going to blend it out. I'm going to pick up some magenta on the same corner of the brush. I'm going to come back here where I first blended it out because I want to have both of those colors in my brush. And then when I put it down, if I don't like the color, it's easier for me to adjust it. So let's give it a test here. And yes, I like that color. So I'm going to float this around the outside edges of my heart. Well, the larger heart at any rate. Definitely want it wider here in these wider areas. And then as I get into the point, I release that pressure. While that one is drying, I'm going to come over to my next heart. I'm going to clean my brush out. And this time I'm going to side load into that base mix. And again, I want to blend it out. Same thing, I'm picking up magenta on the same corner and blending these two colors together on top of where I blended my first, or did my first blending. This is going to go, again, around the outside edges of this heart here. So I'm going over my cross hatching. This is going to set the cross hatching in. You should still be able to see it, but this allows it to be more of a glow in the center part of the heart and not all the way across the heart. Clean up my edges there. All right, my first heart is dry, so I'm going to go back in with my petal pink and blend out. I'm going to pick up that magenta again, and I am blending out right on top of where I first blended. And now I'm going to pick up again in the same corner of the brush a little bit of Poetic Plum. So I don't have a lot on my brush. I'm going to come over here to where I did my blending and blend those colors together. I just want to deepen the shadow. So you can see how that is creating a much deeper shadow. And I like to blend this way because it's easier for me to adjust my color. Let's say when I put this down on my piece, I didn't like the color. Let's say I wanted a little more Poetic Plum. Then I could pick that up in my brush and reblend it out. Or if I had too much Poetic Plum, I could pick up my base color again and keep reblending that way, and then I would be able to easier see what I'm doing on my piece. So now let's go back up to number 2 again. I'm basically going to do the same thing. So I'm going to pick up my base mix and blend out. I'm going to pick up my magenta and blend out on top of where I blended out my base mix. I'm going to pick up a tad again of Poetic Plum, blend that out on the same path. Going to add a little deeper shading. I think I'm going to add a bit more magenta to my brush. Poetic Plum is dulling it down too much. Okay. I like that better. And again, this shadow is just allowing the center part of that cross hatching to shine. My next heart is going to shade with blush pink. It's not going to show up a whole lot because there's a lot of this color in the background. But it should help to, again, kind of ground that highlight a little bit. And when that's dry, I'm going to keep the baby blush in my brush. Keep it side loaded. I'm going to pick up a little magenta. And just like before, I'm going to blend it out on top of where I blended out the baby blush. Going to add this around the outside edges. So I hope you can see how we are subtly, again with these colors, getting a little lighter and lighter. As we go up to the top of this stack of hearts. I'm going to move on to heart number 4. Sorry, I forgot to put out my next color, which is Cotton Candy. I'm going to move to a smaller brush. I'm going to side load into my Cotton Candy and blend out. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of magenta in my brush and blend on top of that path. I'm going to add shading to this heart. Once again, this shading is going to cover up the cross hatching on the outer edges, but it's going to allow the center area to shine. While that's drying, I'm going to work on my top heart. And this is just a side load of Cotton Candy. Again, this doesn't show up a lot, but it does set in that highlight a little bit. Now, while I have that color in my brush, I'm going back in and picking up a tad of magenta. And I'm going to blend that out on top of that first path. My top heart is now dry, so I'm going to add this. You can see it's very, very subtle on this heart. Don't want a whole lot of that magenta. And now I'm going to pick up more magenta in my dirty brush, blend it out on that same path. I'm going to add a second shading to my heart number 4, which is second from the top of the stack. I'm not pressing very hard as I apply some of these shadows because I want to keep it really nice and light. So maybe soft is the better word to use for that. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is add some glitter paint to all of my hearts. I'm not a glitzy kind of person, but I do like a little bit of glitter in certain circumstances. So I'm going to be using DecoArt Glamour Dust Glitter Paint. This is Celebration Pink. I love these paints because they come in a variety of colors, and they do add a little extra color to my pieces. So they come in the pink and lavender and greens and turquoise blues and just some really beautiful golds. And again, so I'm adding that to all of my hearts. That is totally up to you if you want to do that or not. I am using my filbert brush just as before, and I'm just going to paint these on. I'm going to try to do each individual heart just to try to keep it a little neater. Sometimes if you paint over everything, it tends to look like just a blob. And so I like to do each item individually. I'm using my number 10. I think I'm even going to use it as I sneak up here to these smaller hearts. It's not like I'm really needing tons of detail. I can just sneak in there and add my glitter. And now it's time to add the extra embellishments on these hearts. So I'm going to start with the bottom heart number 1 and add some comma strokes to it. I am using my Jo Sonja Sure Touch 1360 short liner. This is a size 6. This is my go-to brush for making strokes. Giving you a pattern in your pattern for the comma strokes, but I find it easier to just stroke them on. So I'm just going to wet my brush. I'm going to pick up cotton candy in my brush. And then I just follow the shape of the area that I'm working in. So I'm going to put my first stroke in along the outside edge. It's my larger one. And I'm going to do 2 more and try to keep my tails pointing in the same direction. Now on this one, I came up from the bottom toward the top. But I'm going to change this one up just so you can see the 2 different ways to do it. I'm going to add another one here, my larger one. And remember, strokes are pressure, release the pressure, come up to that fine point. And that's all there is to a comma stroke. For my next heart, I'm going to go in with Baby Blush. I'm going to add a heart in the center using my stylus. I'm going to use the large end of my stylus to do that. I'm going to load my brush in the paint in the center of the puddle. And I put it just right in the center, so I'm going to put down 2 dots. And I'm going to pull them down to form a point, and there's my heart. Pretty darned easy. The rest of the work is going to be done with warm white. I'm going to use, since I'm doing a small area and small letters, my Dynasty Micron 5/0 detailer. Has really short bristles. You can see it there. I don't usually like using small brushes, but I do really like this brush, especially working in a small area. This has become the brush that I like to use when I'm signing any of my work. So again, I'm doing this with white. Again, I gave you a pattern, but I really think it's pretty easy to just fill it in yourself. And again, I think strokes. So I'm going to basically do a comma stroke here for the top of my L. And then a smaller one here. I'm leaving the O. I'm not going to do the O because I'm going to put a heart there. So then there'll be room for a V and an E. And again, I'm going to use the large side of my stylus to add another heart here for the O. For my next heart, again, I'm using the large end of the stylus and warm white. I'm going to start in the center of this hump and add 4 dots. I'm going to reload. I'm going to tap down on that center one again and add 3 more. Do the same thing on this side. As you probably know, again, right on that first one, each dot you make is going to get a little smaller, and so that's why I'm doing it this way. So here's going to be my larger dot. Large dot, and then some smaller ones. On the next heart, and use the small end of my stylus. Kind of wanted to give it sort of a scallop look. So I'm going to start here but I'm doing kind of a triangle. So the larger one, that didn't come out too large. And then 2 smaller ones here. We'll worry about that area later. So the larger one and 2 smaller ones down here. Just for something a little bit different. And then here, I'm just going to come in the center and up. I felt we needed something along the outside edges, again, just to set things in. This just looked like hearts floating in the air, and I didn't like the way that looked. So I'm using my number 14 shader. You want something large. I would say no smaller than a 12 if you have to go there, but I wouldn't even do a 12. I'm going to add my water to my brush. I'm taking the excess moisture out. I'm side loading into Poetic Plum and blending out. Now I have a little extra water in here because I want to keep this pretty soft. Then what I like to do is take the water side of my brush and I'm going to pinch the extra moisture out. And then I'm going to find a damp part of my paper towel and I just whisper touch it there. That will take the excess out without taking out too much moisture. And I'm going to add this right along that outside edge on both sides. I'm running out of paint as I get to the top, and I like that look. So now I'm going to reload my brush. Again, side load, blend it out real well. Pinching the water side of my brush, swiping it on that damp part of my paper towel. Now I want to keep the dark color here at the bottom part of the bookmark. And I'm slowly fading out as I get up to the top. Make sure the sides are totally dry. And you can come along the bottom and add some shading there. I didn't do it across the top. Again, my paint is fading out as I pull up to the top. And I like the way this looks. Okay, and now the last thing we have to do, well, 2 things. We're going to put these hearts on here. Now, I'm using cotton candy, and if any of your paints you're using are still workable but not super fresh, put out new paint because you have to have totally fresh paint to do dots correctly. I'm using cotton candy and baby blush. Now I actually have 2 different sizes of styluses. This is my larger one. This one is by Kemper Tools. I think you can see that. I've had it forever. I probably got it from Viking Woodcrafts, but I can't be sure. Anyway, I like it because it has this really nice big point on the end. You can see this is my normal stylus. You can see the difference in the sizes. But if you don't have this, you could probably try a pencil or a pen, something. Brush handle is probably going to be a little bit too big. But at any rate, this is what I did. again, I kind of gave you an idea where I did these hearts, but feel free to put them however you want. I tried to keep this a little sweeping motion, so I want to continue that. So I'm using the large side. I'm going straight into the center of my cotton candy. I'm putting down 2 dots. I'm going to pull them down to a center point. I'm going to clean off my tip. I'm going to use the smaller end of this same larger stylus. I'm going to add another heart. So 2 dots, pull down. So that one's a little smaller than the one I just did. Well, I have this color in my brush, or I'm sorry, in my stylus. I'm going to pick up some baby blush right on top of that. So I'm kind of lightening this color up. No, I take it back. Let's back up. Let's clean that off. Let's come back now to the smaller of my 2 styluses, but I'm going to use the larger end of that. I'm going to add another heart. So 2 dots. And now, I'm going to use that same end, pick up some cotton candy, and I'm going to pick up baby blush on top of it. I'm going to add 1 more heart. So 2 dots. So this is getting a little bit lighter and a little smaller. Then I add my last one. I am not reloading. Putting down some dots, and I'm doing something there, but it's fading into the background. And that's what I wanted to do, because love is taking flight. Then the last thing I did was I used Deco Art Extreme Sheen 14 karat gold, because again, it felt to me like it needed something else. If you like it this way, you certainly can leave it. But if you decide to use the gold, I'm going to use flat brush. I'm making sure I'm loading it nice and flat from the side of the puddle. I don't want any blobs of paint. And then I am just running this brush along the outside edge. Now, is some of it getting onto the front? Yeah, a little bit. I kind of like it. If you don't like it, use a little less paint. But I kind of like the way that looks, because I think it just adds a little something to the finished piece. Now that's a little too much, so I am going to take that off. That got a little carried away. Just be sure to keep your fingers out of any dots or hearts that haven't dried yet. Again, I just think this gives it a nice finished look. And there you are. I did want to put something about love on the back, and I couldn't come up with anything. And then this popped into my head. To love another person is to see the face of God. It's a quote from Victor Hugo's Les Miserables. It is my very favorite show and one of my very favorite quotes ever. So, and I used a Prismacolor black cherry colored pencil to do that. Would have been nice to paint it on, but that was just a little bit more work than I wanted to do. So there you have it. I was going to spray varnish these, but I think they're pretty good. I don't think there's any need to do that. So I'm just going to let these go. Thanks for watching. Please be sure to buy the pattern. I would appreciate that. Excuse me. Until next time, happy painting.